the issues in Strathmore as obvious as they are that our group talked about today? Are there as many challenges, or are they relatively small?
I would say they're pretty much on par, Wally.
Okay.
I'd just like to comment on Tom's statement about your, or actually it was yours, Wally, that you didn't think the kids would be able to handle the skating at U13, if I'm correct there. Is that right?
Yes.
One observation I've had over the last few years is that we tend to categorize kids, and not only on the hockey rink, but in life in general, on what they should be capable of at this age. And I've learned that there's a fallacy in that thinking. We should be reasonably challenging them above and beyond that within reason, and see what they can absorb. Let them tell us what they're capable of instead of us predetermining that and then withholding some training, some information, some ideas that they could act on now instead of sometime in the future. And that translates onto the hockey rink as well. That I don't feel it hurts to run an exercise, run a drill above and beyond what the norm would be, and see what they do with it, see what they take out of it. And I've had positive results, such as what you had there, more often than not.
Well, it was a kind of a neat practice because 3 of my girls, college girls, came to practice because they had a bye weekend. And then Cassie was there. So it was us 3 and Cassie. So we did it, and I'd stop them once in a while, say this and that, and then she'd stop them and give a few little pointers to them. And I could not believe the difference because, as we all know, Pee-wee kids are it's more 1-on-5 than anything, not a whole lot of passing. Everybody has breakouts, but once they get into the neutral zone, the blinders usually go on. There are a few players that move the puck. But so you have to be able to win a 1-on-1, especially when you're a girl and you're playing against a 6 boy, because that's what's happened now. Some of these kids are just humongous. I'm
going to share a story, Tom, it relates to the drill sequence, the handicap portion. I went to my first Spengler Cup, coaching European pros and the top 10 amateurs from Canada, 5 NCAA and 5 CIS players, playing the first ever Spengler Cup with, basically an amateur team combined with European pros. George Kingston did a double regroup attack drill to begin the practice. The defenseman could not skate the drill on big ice. They couldn't transition skate, which is what the handicap horseshoe teaches you to maintain momentum for going from forward to backward and get striding sooner, allowing only maybe one crossover to get out of that transition or one cross under. And George did the drill, and I said, George, just give me 10 minutes with the guys, the D, to work on transition skating because they can't set a gap and they get lost on the rush. The gap's too far, or they're too close, or they can't skate the transition skating needed on the big ice because of the amount the Europeans are going to pass. 10 minutes, problem solved, drill worked, and lo and behold, that competition, we ended up winning the gold medal in the shootout. And that drill contributed to the defenseman's confidence in how to play situations.
Yeah,
just like your girls.
It's a great sequence. And what I did is I adapted a little. Rousselainen would do a drill that, like I talked about. You leave from the red line, and the offensive and the defensive player both go touch their blue line, and then now the defenseman's got to go up and transition skate forward to backwards.
Yeah.
And we did, so it was a little bit of an adaptation, but it did make an incredible difference.
Tom, I'm throwing a curve at you here. How does serving hurt or hinder or help the playing of a rush? Maybe prevent playing of a rush.
Well, I think it depends. If the player's coming down the middle, you really can't surf, right?
Right.
If the player goes wide, at some point you turn and you angle and you keep them on the outside and you angle and you finish.
Yeah.
So, I think it's becoming more and more in the game that you surf instead of, like I remember TJ teaching the defense. You go backwards and then you kind of back up a little bit facing them and then go forward.
Yep.
To get them in the corner. I think surfing, you turn a little quicker.
Yeah.
And you angle. That's my perception of it anyways.
Yep. I've got an anal detail here. We'll get to it later. Go ahead, Rick, with your point.
I was just going to add to Tom's comment. It's one more tool. If you teach them the surfing aspect of things, depending on the situation as they read it, it's one more tool they can use to effectively or more effectively play the game. And back to my earlier point, I would teach it rather than withhold it.
Yeah. I just wanted to comment, working with the national team, I learned something about playing the rush better because we played the Soviets. Now, Rick, Peter, how do you teach a defenseman to align when they're playing a one-on-one? Peter? A rush.
Well, for us, the points that we would cover is we want that player, the attacker, to be on our outside shoulder. For me, I'm not a fan of the stick waving in any way, shape, or form. What I like to do is I like to have them actually just point their stick at the puck to give the illusion that I'm on the puck. And that allows me to move left or right, because that position will keep the stick and the puck right in the middle of my body, so I can easily move to either side. So that's kind of a couple of little basics that I teach the guys.
Rick, anything else?
I agree with that. Use the stick for steering, one hand on the stick. I see too many of them trying to use two hands on a backward skate, defending a one-on-one. No swishing of the stick. It's elbow in, so they don't know your range in case a poke check situation arises, and you've got that element to use to your advantage too, but basically the same way Peter described it.
Yeah, and that's what you see a lot of, right, Rick? You see a lot of that player that has the arm fully extended. You see that all the time, as opposed to having, like you said, that little trick where even have the guys pull the elbow back a little bit, so that there is almost that extra room that you have as a defender.
I agree with that.
Okay, what I learned from the Soviets, and Dave King actually discovered it, the outside shoulder alignment to the inside shoulder wasn't good enough. We had to line up the shoulder with the crotch of the attacker. In other words, the horizontal gap had to be tighter. It's one thing to get a vertical gap, but the horizontal gap against better skaters, faster skaters, and we could skate well enough backwards because we practiced it with the national team. That drill progression was created with the national team. We did a lot of individual work on transition skating. Now, the teaching points, Tom, and I don't know whether you reinforce them or not, but I did a high performance clinic on defensive tactical play in Saskatchewan. And it's not that it was over the heads of the coaches. It's what we're talking about. It's just that they have skill experts to teach those things, so they didn't really pay attention to the teaching details that we do. So I wasted my time, really. Dave King sent me to do this because that's what we did with the national team. But Tom, when your players skate backwards, they've got to transition. And a former national figure skating coach, the guy told me when I did this at a clinic 30 years ago, he says, turn your toes, unweight, and get back into backward striding with a cross under and stride. It's a figure skating idea, that technique we had to teach.
That's a Choctaw.
Yep. The second thing, striding backwards, was sit tall, ride a horse, C-cut only, and it's actually a J-stroke, more blade on the ice, and bring your feet back under your body. So sit tall, ride a horse, J-stroke, and bring the heel straight back. If you keep crossing over and turning your butt and weaving, you're not going to be able to establish that vertical gap. If you don't stride backwards, you won't be able to set a horizontal gap. Now, are those too demanding to expect coaches to teach, or we need a coaching specialist? I'm gathering that there.
I think you mention it and you teach it just like everything, right? And they all catch on at a different level.
Yeah.
You
I
guys
think you've got to get coaches to accept that level of detail in their own training.
Yeah.
And be able and capable and willing to transfer that into their players.
Yeah.
I think maybe that constant crossover is the first thing you want to eliminate. You know, some people go backwards the whole time crossing over.
Yeah.
I think it's because they're working so hard, they think they're going faster. But then the good puck handler just waits till they cross over one way and they're gone.
Yeah, most players can't stride backwards. They cross their feet too often, and they don't understand the importance of that ability to stride and maintain the gaps. So Dave King referred to the horizontal and the vertical gaps, and they're a factor. Now, I had a session with Daryl Belfry yesterday, and all the defense are literally constantly discouraging a breakout, not allowing them to cross the first blue line, pressuring earlier, getting up there, standing up, so you don't transition, but you prevent the long pass in the neutral zone because the defender's closer. And Tom, like I said, with your team, your players were on the ringette line, and the other team was attacking from the neutral zone, and they had backed up too far.
Oh yeah, they players think they're safer if they back into the goalie, give the player all of the room in the world. But we talk about that all the time. Get up the ice, and they're getting better at it.
But that transition drill is supposed to establish that tighter gap.
Yeah.
Now, Kim McCullough was on last week. I don't know, Peter, you heard what she said, but her U9 team is playing whole ice hockey in the second half in their association. Why, I don't know. But what the U11 coaches, she's seeing the weakest players are playing defense, and they're told not to cross center ice. So that means they're not developing the skill package needed to play the game in all three zones. They're just putting the weakest players back there so they don't give up breakaways. And at minor hockey, and Tom's prevented it, the best players goes through the team and scores. So there's a developmental part of doing things the right way, the right time, and teaching detail that I believe can be repaired a little bit in the coaching modules so that coaches accomplish a purpose in a drill. And many of the drills they do, players don't have the defensive tactical skating skills to do the drills effectively and the offensive transition skills to do the drills purposely and effectively because they don't teach. They just do drills. So anyway, we've had a good session today. Rick, I want to thank you for coming on. And
Pleasure.
would you be able to join us, Rick, on a Wednesday at Cadence in Calgary?
I'm afraid Wednesday morning is my last working episode in the week. It frees up my Thursdays, so I'm not at this point.
At least we got you Thursdays. Okay, Mike, anything else to add?
Peter.
Mike gone, Peter's here.
Oh, Peter, anything else?
No, I enjoyed it as ever. I'm glad I was able to get back with you guys. I haven't been around the last couple of weeks, so I missed it.
Good having you. Good having you. And if any of you know anybody else that's on the same mindset that has the time, let's get them on. Now, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Wally, in my mentoring, watching numerous different coaches running practices, running drills, there's very little attention to the detail when they're doing it. They'll run a flow drill, they'll run a one-on-one drill. Kids are gapping way too loose. They're turning and skating forwards before they turn backwards. And for the most part, the coaches just don't address those things. They've got 10 minutes allotted for this exercise and they're going to get through it and then we'll move on to the next one. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed in the bigger picture as well. Getting back to teaching the details of the game, such as the transition skating and the backward striding that you referenced a few minutes back.